technocrats who will create this massive governmental project to communicate with the future will be certain paradoxes which are built into the effort to do this. One of the things that will be discovered is if you invent a time communicator that can send a message into time, into the future, then anyone in the future can send a message back to you, but no message can go further back into the past than the moment of the invention of the first time machine. Do you follow? So suddenly in human history, an absolute membrane for information is established. Before time communicator, all causality moves from the past to the future. After time communicator, causality moves both directions. And consequently, more advanced states thousands, millions, hundreds of millions of years in the future will diffuse through the entire temporal medium like heat through a gas. And at that point, what you will suddenly find is the moment the switch is thrown on the first time communicator, the future end state of evolution on this planet will appear 1 microsecond later, because the entirety of the future will be forced to happen all at once. I'm not sure you're with me. What?
That's pretty good. Keep going.
So basically it's simply a technological innovation which would be like a whistle for calling Almighty God into the historical process. The first person to invent a device which communicates with the future will discover that all of the future is suddenly communicating with them. And this will be experienced as a very radical sort of transition in the way we maintain our homes and businesses. Well, I don't know. I think we've run past intermission time. Maybe we should have an intermission, and then all these people who are burning to ask questions should come back. How do you feel about that? Who whines behind the lights?
How about just a couple of questions?
I don't care. Fine. You.
If that were true, we'd already be affected by that, though, wouldn't we?
Well, because when that switch got thrown and the future kind of falls back onto that moment, the past is going to pile up behind it with momentum.
Well, but we haven't reached that moment when the switch is thrown.
Somebody has.
But the future cannot go any further into the past than that moment.
Absolutely, but the past is still going to pile up upon that point because the past is in a causative mode, right? First one thing, then another, and another.
Well, don't you think that's what's making the world so crazy?
It may well.
It's that we are running smack into another dimension. And that's what's creating the shock wave of cultural effects that we call the 20th century, but which, once we get through all this, it will be known as the bow shock of transition to the millennial eschaton, or whatever it was.
I've been storing up questions on that, but the most recent one is about the nature of time and whether in fact it is linear and, I had a talk with a couple of people, Mark Miller and Roger Gregory, who run Project Xanadu for Universal and the World Library, and they clued me into one of these great cosmic secrets. They told me about a month ago that time is in fact asymptotic, and that we are approaching the asymptote, and at that moment, this point is known as the naked singularity. And he said, we're entering this asymptotic curve now, and this is when the quote-unquote the weirdness is about to begin. With where synchronicity begins piling up on synchronicity. And I wonder if this fits in with any work of these.
Well, I think that this asymptotic thing that you're talking about, how you perceive it depends on where you stand in time. There is a certain point of view where only a few moments after the Big Bang, the asymptotic weirdness began to set in. It was interesting, a few weeks ago I was visited in Hawaii by none other than Carl Sagan. And he had a number of things on his mind, but one of the things that he was at great pains to point out to me was I said something about this asymptotic approach to the end of history. And he said, well, my dear boy, you just have it all wrong. The speed of information transfer reached the speed of light with the invention of radio. It's been absolutely flat ever since. The largest thermonuclear blast ever detonated was in 1958. There hasn't been a bigger one for 30 years. The fastest human object ever built was launched in 1967. There hasn't been a faster one since. So this nonsense about ever increasing this, that, and the other just doesn't hold water.
But we're dealing with the cybernetic.
Well, what is increasing asymptotically is density of connectedness. And obviously, at a certain point, you reach maximum density of connectedness in the present. The only way you can then continue to densify connection is if the connections begin to move outward in time, into the future and into the past. And you undergo this transition from particulate Cartesian Newtonian existence to this wave mechanical, shamanic, both present in the past, present in the future, present in the present kind of existence. This is what I meant about the social implications of integrating Rupert's paradigm. It is permission to feel this new way and to know that it is a more correct mirroring of the greater cosmos than the model that had us as the citizen, the ego, the individual, all of that sort of thing.
So we on the threshold of major changes in our information universe, based on, hypertext and so forth, the way which would allow us to go quantum, that would be the next.
Well, see, I think it's something much more profound than that. Let's take my example about the time communicator for a moment, and let's tell a little science fiction story to make it more understandable what I'm talking about. Let's pretend it's not a time communicator, it's a real time machine. And we're going to send somebody into the far-flung reaches of the future. And we've never done this before. And so we load them into the jeweled device that we've built in our laboratory, and we pass out the champagne, and we have a brief countdown. And then we throw the switch, and our lab chief sails off into the future. Well, now what do the rest of us sitting there see? What happens at that moment? Well, at first I thought what would happen is suddenly all over the world time travel